Many of us have these same beliefs, and they might look a little bit different, but they show up for us in a lot of ways. The reality is, we don't have to have a perfect plan. We don't have to blow up our entire lives, but acknowledging how we're feeling and how we're thinking and how we're behaving and how we're showing up for ourselves, and then deciding to make even the smallest of change is forward progress. And that's kind of the way I would package up the unlearning.
Electricast. Welcome to Season 4 of Transforming 45. I'm your host, Lisa Boat, and this season we're stepping fully into our power. The heat, the hormones, the heartbreak, the healing. This is Midlife, raw and redefined. Each episode, you'll hear stories of humans who are rewriting the rules, reclaiming their bodies, their desires, their voices. This is where we stop shrinking, start shining, and remember who the hell we are. Because midlife isn't a crisis, it's an awakening. Let's get transforming 45. Hello, and welcome to this week's episode of Transforming 45. This week, I'm super excited to welcome Angela Burk. She is a writer, marketing strategist, and self-proclaimed midlife hellraiser. Welcome to the club, my friend, who is absolutely done playing small. She's the author of Real Girl's Guide to Midlife. A mom of 7 in a beautifully chaotic blended family, and a woman building a bold bicontinental life between California and Australia. Angela tells the truth about this season of life, the messy, the magnetic, the wildly expansive, with humor, grit, and just the right amount of sass. Angela, welcome to the show. So glad you're here today.
Thank you so much for having me. And when I hear things like mom of 7 and, long distance relationship, it's like, wow. And even sometimes hearing writer, it still kind of blows me away that I wrote this book. But thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, it's amazing the way it takes time to adjust to these new identities, right? When we've held one identity for so long, I know in my own case, it took me a really long time to let go of educator because that's what I had been for 20 years and that was easy, right? Everybody understands what teacher is. Everybody gets that. And stepping into this new role took some time to adjust to that identity.
Yeah. Yeah, no, it's so true. And, it's funny because one of the things that I write about in the book is really about grief, right? And grief can come in a lot of forms, not the least of which, when our identities shift, because they do for us at this point, right? Whether you're a mom and maybe your kids are leaving the nest, or your relationships are changing, your job is changing, your physical appearance changes. It's like, man, it's a blow, and it could be destabilizing.
Yeah, it really can be. I find myself taking a deep breath before saying the age of my oldest child. And my oldest child is 21.
Yes, yes.
It's so interesting the way it changes the way people look at you when you say, "Yeah, I'm
Yeah.
a mom." And they're like, "How old is your child?" "Oh, 21." "What?"
23, like, for me, my oldest boy, so I have 3 myself, and my oldest is 23, so even that's really weird, and then being with him out, like, in the wild is also a
Mm.
trip.
Yes.
And the other thing that's been really weird is, like, all my boys now are taller than me, so I feel like the mini. And I'm not short, I'm, like, average, but I feel like the mini. But, yeah, some of these things, but you say brace yourself. I sometimes when I get up in the morning and, like, you go and you're like, "I'm gonna wash my face, brush my teeth," I sometimes have to just, like, steady myself before I look in the mirror because it's like, "Damn, this is just gonna be something this morning. What new? What fresh hell do we have this morning that we're gonna
I know.
identify?"
Can we talk about this a bit? Because
Yes.
this is something that has really been weighing on me as well. I mean, part of it is the time we're living in and the realizations that we are having about what we lived in, what really shaped our ideas about beauty and beauty expectations. But god damn, I am so hard on myself. Like I'm
Yes.
looking at like so for example, this morning, like Facebook, when it gives you the like then and now.
Mm,
And today it was a picture of me from 2021. And so I took a picture of myself today and I put it there and I was like, where? And I just was like, where do I see the signs of aging? I literally spent a couple of minutes just looking at those two pictures. And then I was like, what am I doing?
yeah.
What
Yeah,
am I
what am I
doing to
doing?
myself?
Yeah. No, it's a hard one, and I think, like, too, for me I've noticed there's a few. So if I go back, right? If I go back to like my 20s and 30s, my mom is only 19 years older than me. So I remember when she was going through a lot of these phases because I was a grown up, right? And she would say stupid, silly things like, oh, my knees are sagging. And it's like, what the hell are you even saying? Like, those are English words, but like, what? Until it happened to me. And I was like, okay, now I get it. And so, like, I have these little flashes that come up when I notice something about my appearance, I flash back to my mom saying these things and me thinking, this is so ridiculous. But the new one for me, I've noticed is my eyelids. Like, I don't understand. I don't, the gravity, and then when I, on the rare chance I put on makeup, I have to like lift my eye. Like it's a two-handed job. Putting on
Mhm.
eyeshadow has never been a two-handed job, but now I'm like, and it's made worse because I have my readers and I need my reader. So I'm like, okay, so I have to somehow either get a super magnifying mirror, which then I'm bending down to get, and that hurts my back. And then I'm two-handing this eyeshadow thing. And then like I'm literally having to lift the skin up and like get into the creases. And I'm like, well, okay. And I think the one thing that I think where I've landed with all this stuff for myself is like, look, there are going to be things that I don't give two shits about, and I'm cool with that. There are going to be things that I give a lot of shits about, and I'm also cool with that. And if there are things that I want to work on or improve, excellent. And no judgment, right? And if there are things that I'm just like, I don't really care. Like the one thing I don't care about right now is just like shaving anywhere. I don't give two shits about shaving. I really
Good for
don't.
you. Yeah.
However, I noticed new age spots and I'm like, okay, well, what am I going to do about that?
Yeah.
Microneedling, IPL, like whatever. Because those are the things that bother me. So it's like, I think how I'm embracing all of this is I first have to be confronted with it and the mirror confronts me and I'm like, woof, that's harsh. And then it's like, okay, how many shits do I give? Maybe not a lot. Okay, cool. I'm going to let that go. And then if I give some shits, then what am I going to do about it? And usually I'm like super like non-invasive, right? Are there
Yeah.
creams or whatever that aren't going to take me 5 hours to put on every night? Are there things that I could do that are like meaningfully impactful without breaking my budget? And if not, then okay, well, if maybe I'm going to give myself 5 years and then decide like the whole eyelid thing. It's like, I really hate it. But maybe I'm going to wait a few years and maybe I'll get that surgery. I don't know. But it's so
Yeah.
hard. It's so confronting.
Confronting is a really good word, and I hadn't really thought about it in that way,
Yeah.
but it
It's just like aggressive and like in your face. It's like, damn, why is it just every morning you wake up? I'm like,
Yeah, I know, and it is that for me, it's like this age spot or this sunspot
yeah,
right here drives me crazy, and then it's like the in between my dye jobs, right? So you can
yeah,
those
don't.
there's the
So,
that's
two things
happening.
about that. I have an age spot that looks like a tiny little heart and it with
Oh,
like a break in the middle. So my kid calls that my tattoo. So like somehow I
love
have a
it.
facial tattoo. But then I had let my hair go probably an extra 3 or 4 months. And my youngest son, he's my sensitive one. He was the one who was like, Mom, can you please go get your hair done? Because you're starting to look old and it scares me.
Yeah,
So that was one thing, but he was also the kid who, because I had been having some hearing problems. I mean, this is like, we're talking probably, if I'm honest with you, probably 5 or 6 years where I noticed my hearing was impacted. 2 years ago, I went to an audiologist because I'm like, shit, this is getting really bad. So the audiologist, I did all the ear stuff, and he's like, okay, look, you're going to need hearing aids in both ears. To which I immediately broke down in the office after hearing, like literally breaking down. And the doctor's like, oh my gosh, I don't know what to do. Do you need tissue? And the nursing staff is coming in. And I was like, I don't really know what's happening. But so he sent me home with hearing aids. He's like, hey, try these for 2 weeks. I lasted 2 hours and I'm like, nope. I had my kid bring them back the next day because I wasn't emotionally ready. Fast
yeah,
forward to last summer, my kid, my 15-year-old, something from the Journal of the American Medical Association linking there's a correlation between untreated hearing loss and dementia. He sat me down. He's like, Mom, my biggest fear with you is that you're going to get dementia and you're going to either forget how to breathe or you're not going to remember me. And so that's when I was like, okay, I got to get this hearing thing. And I did. So I got hearing aids in the fall, kind of like November. And do I wear them all the time? No, but I wear them a lot. And it is hugely impactful. So it's like just the things just never end. They just
yeah.
don't end.
They
is what
don't.
I
And I
mhm.
think thank you for bringing up the impact on your kids because it's something I've been thinking about a lot as well as I see that I am starting to change, especially because there we go through this like long period of time, right, where there isn't really any change.
Mhm.
Probably for like 20 years, you kind of look the same.
Right. Yeah.
And so you become very accustomed to that version of yourself.
Yep.
And so when these changes start to happen, and I was thinking back to, I was having this same thought process that you just had, where I was thinking about when I started noticing that my parents were starting to look a little different. And my mom died at 52.
Wow.
So, which is now only a few years from where I am. So I'm
Yeah.
turning 49 this spring.
Right.
So it plays in my subconscious, I think, all the time.
Yeah.
That and I remember thinking, "Oh, she's starting to look a little different," and the
Yeah.
how that impacted me.
Yeah.
And I was thinking about that for my own children.
Mhm.
Are they starting to notice that I am looking not exactly the same as I did?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
how is that impacting them?
Yeah. I mean, it's so true. And I was fortunate enough, my mom is still alive, but I also had my grandmother, her mother, alive until I was 41. And so I remember a lot of the changes that they went through. And I also remember the things that I noticed about both of them were their hands. Like these hands that were so strong and handled so many things. And I remember noticing, arthritis setting in and their fingertips looking a little bit different. And about 2 or 3 months ago, my son was pinching my skin on the top of my hands. He's like, "Why does your skin stay pinched?" And then he noticed it like here, he started pinching other skin. And it's like, "Ooh, don't do that." And yeah, it's gross, but it made me realize, wow, that reminded me of my noticing my grandma and my mom's hands in particular, and for whatever reason, that hand thing kinda got me, and I was like, "Oh, yeah. It's all happening to us, Lisa. It's all happening."
It is happening to us. And
It
so
is.
along those lines, what are you finding that you have to let go in order to really step into this
Yeah.
stage?
It centers on patterns of behavior and stories that either other people told about me and I internalized or just things that were modeled for me, right? As I was writing the book, and I'm not I had never written anything before. So I started writing this book last spring. And in writing the book, I interviewed a lot of women and a lot of experts, but a lot of what I saw were these kind of red threads that sort of connected a lot of our stories. But for me, a lot of it was rooted in stories and beliefs and behaviors that I held, which signaled the fact that I was the trusted one, the reliable one, the steady one. I was responsible for keeping the peace, for being quiet, for being small, for not making waves. And a lot of that then, it didn't just show up for me in one or two aspects of my life. It really bled into everything. It affected how I worked, how I lead, how I parent, how I show up in relationships. But, I somehow became aware and taught myself through these set of beliefs and actions that like my happiness and my pleasure had to come last on the list. Like I could not come first, right? Because my coming first would mean other people were going to suffer. How do I carry that load? What I realized in kind of navigating my phase, entering my phase, and certainly it was reaffirmed writing this book, was like many of us have these same beliefs and they might look a little bit different, but they show up for us in a lot of ways. And, the reality is we don't have to have a perfect plan. We don't have to blow up our entire lives, but acknowledging how we're feeling and how we're thinking and how we're behaving and how we're showing up for ourselves, and then deciding to make even the smallest of change is forward progress. And that's kind of the way I would sort of package up the unlearning. And then it just kind of starts to snowball, right? A big one for me is I had and still do, if I'm honest with you, still do sometimes have a hard time saying no, right? Like I can just say no. No is a full
Yeah.
sentence. I'm not available. That's 3 words. I don't owe anybody explanation, justification. I don't need permission. I don't need to apologize for anything. And so it became like this, one mindset shift just started to snowball into different ways of thinking, breaking old patterns for myself. And it was like, damn, this is fucking liberating. And why didn't I do this before? Why did it take me so long to like figure this stuff out?
I know. I'm working through this myself, and part of sometimes the resistance around this is I can speak for myself anyway. Being an empty nester and now having, like, not being an educator, living in this different way, my life is more spacious, right? I have more time. So I feel like when someone asks me to do something, that
Yeah.
because I have the time to do
Mhm.
so, I should say yes.
Yeah.
And so I currently find myself in this place where I committed to doing something where I'm like, "I fucking hate this.
But why did I do this?
Why am I doing this? I don't want it. I do not want to do this."
Yeah.
And so now I'm in the position of having to say, "You know what? This is not for me." And there are so many stories I am telling myself about, like, what the response is gonna be and what people are gonna think, and, so I am actively sitting in this space knowing, 100% knowing the decision that I need to make, but and I observe myself
Huh?
in it, but I still am so struggling with making the final move to say, "Yeah, this is not for me."
Yeah. Well, it's hard, and I know. I think one of the other things that was sort of reaffirmed for me in writing this book was that, and kind of looking back to even my hardest decades, I was never alone. So I could say that you're not alone. I was never falling apart and I was never crazy. And, those things were very important for me to get a little bit of affirmation and validation on. Because there are times where, like, you're going through a lot of these changes and they feel very isolating and alone. But one of the things that I love about what you just even described is the fact that you are stopping. You're witnessing and experiencing the things that are happening. You're noticing changes either in your mind or your body or your reaction to something. And then you're making a conscious decision that says, look, I need to decide something different. And whatever that looks like for you in whatever timeline, maybe some of those decisions are easier to make. For me, like I said, it's the saying no or asking for permission or softening my opinion, right? If I go back to when I was working, I remember there were lots of meetings where I'd be sitting in rooms and I'd hear these people talk. And I'd be like, I could see through everything that they were saying and sort of go, like, you're saying this thing today, but are you worried about what's going to happen in 2 weeks and 2 months? And I am, and I can help you. But I'd soften my opinions. And I've become much more aware of when I'm doing that. And then I make a conscious decision. Maybe there are times where I'm going to choose my battles and I'm not going to speak up, but there are a lot more times where I am deciding to speak up. And the risk is low, right? Saying I'm not available, 3 words, or I need a break, 3 words. I don't agree, 3 words. Like, the risk is low, but when the risks are a little bit higher or, the perceived, sometimes it's perceived and not real, collateral, in quotes, collateral damage is high, it might take us a little bit longer to get there. And I think that that's totally normal. And I do think, the realization and the awareness that you're even sort of becoming conscious of in your own life is huge. Because sometimes, like, that's taken me decades to get to. Like,
Yes.
stopping and just looking and listening for signs. If take rest, right? For me and for many women who shared their stories, how does that show up for you? Well, for me, it showed up with when I get easily annoyed, when I wake up feeling exhausted, which is like menopause, but whatever, like we'll table that. When I'm like reaching for coffee throughout the day more, it's like, fuck, I need to stop. Like my body is telling me something. What do I need to do? Dreading the things that used to give me energy. It's like, okay, these things, I have to be aware of these things. And now what am I going to do with the information? And the conscious decision might be I do nothing. And doing nothing is a choice. But so
Yes.
is doing something. And sometimes it's even just the other pattern that I've seen play out for a lot of women here is saying the thing you need or want out loud. So forget what you do with that, but the act of being in a room by yourself and saying, I need a break or I don't want to do this. That interrupts. And I learned this because I'm not a doctor or like, a neuroscientist or any kind of specialist here. But that saying what you need and want out loud interrupts. There's a brain behavior that changes. And so sometimes even that alone is a step forward. And we
Yeah.
don't give ourselves enough credit for some of that stuff.
No, we don't. Saying them out loud, there's the resonance, right? The
Yes.
vibration of actually hearing your own
Yes.
voice
Yep.
say what you want. When people have no idea what they want or need, just starting there,
Mm-hmm.
right? Even if it's just asking yourself the question, right? Sometimes we don't have the answer, but even if we ask ourselves the question out loud, it starts that neural pathway of, "Oh,
Mhm.
this is something we need to think about."
100%. And you nailed it, right? For many of us, our lives are slightly more spacious. And that could come in as a result of a lot of different things. And the other thing that's happening is we are becoming more aware of our place in our own life. And, it's not selfish. The world isn't going to open up and swallow everybody that we love whole. And in fact, we're actually going to be better individuals because we are taking up space in our own lives. We are giving ourselves the attention first. We are becoming aware of the things that we want and need and not apologizing, not saying no, not brushing them off, not asking for permission. And I think, that alone is a massive change. So like sometimes I think, and I know this for myself, and it was echoed in a lot of the women that I talked to for the book, we don't give ourselves enough credit for even the smallest of steps that we take. For many of us, like it is like, oh my gosh, we don't have the perfect plan. Or, oh my God, I have to have every answer to every question before I take a move or I make a change. It's like, no, even that act of just, hey, something's not right. I need to say the thing out loud. And then I'm going to decide to do something. I don't have to decide what I'm going to do in that moment, but I'm going to decide I don't like what's happening here. Those steps are huge. Those are huge.
Yes, they are. And as we step into our own main character
Mm.
energy,
Mhm.
and it starts to impact the relationships that we have.
Yeah.
You have a relationship that is bicontinental.
Yes, I do.
So I'd love to know, like, how does that that work out in this new phase?
I'm gonna give you my perspective, and I'm also gonna echo this with a few other kind of points of validation that I certainly r- I picked up from even the process of writing the book. If I go back to my 30s, my 20s and 30s, the the idea of a relationship like I have today would never even have entered my mind because I had a very specific playbook, right? And I had this view of what my life needed to be, who I was, how I was going to show up, what everything was going to look like, and that view kept me stuck, I think, for probably longer in my marriage, let's say, than I should have because I had three boys. And yeah, was the relationship perfect? No, but it was okay. I didn't deserve to be happier. I shouldn't want more. Everything was good from the outside. So I've told myself the story. My kids deserved an intact family more than they needed a happy Angela. That was a farce, right? So you get through that. I made these changes in my 40s, which was probably my most change filled decade so far. And then I met this guy, right? What was so ironic about this was, so we meet, we ended up meeting in person for the first time in Colorado. We had a great weekend. He goes back to Australia. I go back here. And then we're talking on the phone. And he's like, I really like you, but like, how is this going to work? And contrary to every fiber of my being, every way I live my life, I answered the question this way. I said, look, I don't think we need to have all the answers. Let's just see where this goes. Like, who the fuck said that? That is not Angela. Angela does not live her life that way. So it started with that, number one. But I do think through this evolution, we've been together for about 10 years. Through this evolution, though, he's seen a lot of me. He saw me, unbeknownst to me, I was really close to becoming postmenopausal right about the time we met. I stopped having a period when I was 47. So I was really early. And then I've gone through now new waves of postmenopause. So he's seen versions of me that don't look like the version of the gal he met, I'm sure. I'm ragey, I'm short, I'm coming into this, understanding of what I want and how I want to live. I'm more vocal, I'm less patient and tolerant. I'm more demanding. I went through a phase where I had less libido. We kind of had to work through that. So he's seen a lot of, version. I like that song, 32 flavors. I have a
Yeah.
lot of flavors
Yes.
and they're still evolving. And so we always joke, like, maybe my next book needs to be The Real Guy's Guide to Your Real Girl. Because, like, for all the things that I don't recognize in myself or I'm embracing, imagine being an outsider and looking in and going, so, yes, we live in two continents. We spend a lot of time together, but we're not together all the time. In some ways, that's probably better, to be honest. And there are aspects of that I actually like. I like having a little bit of space. Early in our relationship, it kind of made the reunions a lot more sexy and fun,
Yeah, for
because
sure.
it's like, woo. hot and heavy, and this was cool. But it's a transition, and I'm as just as I'm learning about myself, he's also having to learn about me. And I'm having to teach him because I'm also teaching myself.
Yes. Yeah. And I think that this is a key realization. I had it when I had Jesse Robertson, who is Husbands for Menopause on
Mhm.
Instagram.
Mhm.
I had him on my show a couple weeks ago. I interviewed him. And it was the first time I thought about, and my husband has known me since I was 18 years old.
Okay, so he's known, yeah,
Yeah. So all the flavors also.
all the flavors.
I'm going to have that song in my head for the rest of the
Yeah, no,
day.
you have
Thank
to
you.
go listen
It's
to
a
it. You're
gift.
welcome. It's so
That's a
good,
gift.
right? It's
I
such a
know.
gift. It's such a gift.
And it was the first time I thought about, if I am not recognizing myself
Yeah.
when I look in the mirror, then what
Yeah,
is he seeing?
right.
So of course we start to navigate these tensions in
Yeah,
relationships where both people are like, who am I married to?
yeah,
Or who am I in relationship with? Or whatever the structure of your partnership is.
absolutely.
Those questions absolutely start to come up, and that it's okay to address them. Again, going back to confronting,
Yeah,
right?
yeah,
It is a confronting thing when you realize, like, I'm not sure I know who I'm in relationship with anymore. And to get comfortable with that and
yeah,
make some decisions around, and sometimes the decision is this partnership is no longer right for me. And
totally.
that absolutely is a valid choice. But I also have heard from a lot of folks who've been in this stage, got divorced, and then realized I didn't want to be divorced.
Right, right.
I just didn't have the language for how to talk about this confronting thing.
Yeah, it's so true. And so, two thoughts on that. I think the language is a really important one. And I also think, when you talk about like grief, like let's go back to that subject, right? Because you can grieve a lot of things: marriages, relationships, old identities, the quietness of a once noisy house, the lives we imagined we were going to have at a certain point that don't look like that. And it's sad. And so first you have to start with like, hey, um, acknowledging that and feeling it and going, okay, because that moves us toward acceptance, right? We can fight against it. You can push the tide and go bury your head in the sand, and you're going to delay your path to acceptance. And I think the other thing that happens though with some of that stuff is there's a lot of fear and shame and embarrassment that comes with it, right? So, and that sometimes breeds a pattern of action that is actually not the next best action. And some of us, and I know I heard this echoed in the book, that a lot of us are trained to view change as being a failure, right? Sometimes different is just different, and
Yes.
sometimes change moves us towards something even better on the other side. But it's so easy to internalize that and go, if something's not working, I failed. If something changes, I failed. If something looks different than I imagined or that I wanted, then it's a failure. But sometimes different is just that. It's change. And many women in the book and a lot of the experts that I talk to reinforce this idea that good things can come from change, but you do have to acknowledge it. And the thing that you said about language, though, is really important. And if I go back to last summer, I'll give you a really good example. I was reading the book by Miranda July, All Fours. It's a fictional book. It's kind of
Yes.
smutty, but I fucking loved it, right? So my guy was here for the month of July. And he says, "What are you reading?" I told him. He's like, "Oh, we sometimes like to read the same book." So we picked up the book. So in this book, though, and I was reading ahead of him. So he had to fly from California to London for work, and I was ahead of him in the book. So he gets, and in the book, there's a chart, right? It's a hormone chart for estrogen and testosterone, men and women, and it's plotted our levels over decades. And at that time, I was really suffering with low libido. I tried to talk to him about it, and I was like, I didn't have words for it. I'm like, it's not you, not me. I don't know what's happening. But I couldn't explain it because I didn't have words. And, I think he was feeling really bad about it and kind of looking at it going, oh my God, is this going to be the future of our relationship now? I was paranoid. I was kind of thinking, I don't want my desire to be gone, but I'm not feeling it. So I opened this book and there's a chart and I read past it, right? Because I saw it and I was like, holy shit. Yeah, this explains fucking everything. So it gets to the chart. He leaves the plane in London, like literally he's walking off the aero bridge. He calls me. He's like, hey, did you get to the chart? And I'm like, yeah, I'm past the chart. He's like, babe, I am so sorry. I'm so sorry that I've been giving you grief about this. And that chart, though, what it did, and there were a few other things that I've noticed that once you start talking about these things, your like the universe will open up. I had just interviewed an expert for the book right about the time that the US FDA did a panel discussion on vaginal estrogen cream, which I listened to. I'd
Yeah.
never done that in my entire life. I see this chart, and the last word I remember from this expert that I interviewed was, "Hey, go talk to your doctor." So I go talk to the doctor like a week later, and my doctor, same doctor I've seen for 25 years, looks at me, and I'm telling her about what's happening. And I had bladder issue, I had a few other things. She's like, "Yeah, that really sucks." I'm like, "Okay, that's the answer I get." And then she said, "Yeah, I think you and your man," she knows where my man lives. Okay. "I think you and your man need to go on more dates." And I'm
Yeah.
like, "Cool, you're fired." So the long and short of it is I found another doctor. I got put on low, and I'm now 7 years past menopause, right?
Hmm. Yep.
I get put on a low dose of estrogen, progesterone, and testosterone. And I started that like in December. And I noticed it's not like I'm ready to drop trow at any moment, but things are starting to come back. And I'm like, this is how I want to live. But I didn't
Yes.
have the language, right? I did not have the language. And so he's feeling bad. I'm feeling like shit
Uh-huh.
because I don't want it. But it's not like I don't want it with him. I just don't want it. And then I kept thinking, is this going to be my life? I don't want it to be. I don't want to live the rest of my life feeling like this.
One, I'm glad that your partner had the response of, "I
Yes.
saw that chart and I'm so sorry."
Yeah. I'm sorry, babe.
Yeah, because that's not always the case.
No, it isn't.
But no, but having someone who's willing to enter into the
Yeah.
conversation with you through a
Yeah.
lens of curiosity and empathy, like
Yeah.
that is the thing I continue to repeat with people around relationships and for
Yep.
men. Like really enter into this from a place of empathy
Yeah.
and curiosity because
Absolutely.
and my partner and I had this conversation this week where, there is a lot breaking down in our world
Yeah.
that is laying bare in front of us
Mm.
just how I mean, it's not that we didn't know it was hard to be a woman in this world. We knew it.
Yeah.
And
And
and now it is so clear how intentional that was. And we
yeah.
knew that it was intentional, but still like having
Yeah.
it confront, let's use
Yeah.
that word again, be
Yep.
so confronting. And I said to him, and he is open and he is thoughtful and he is all
Mm-hmm.
of the things, but I said, you will never understand what it is to live in this body. And it's why I need you to be so open and curious
Yeah.
and stand with me as an ally.
Yeah.
And that's the other part that I think is really important for partnerships is to
Yeah.
realize like we don't need your silence, right? We need you to be willing to engage in conversation, but also
Yeah.
to advocate and to
Yeah.
stand up and say what's happening because we cannot. I'm tired.
I'm tired. I'm
I'm
so tired.
tired.
I'm
I'm
so
so
tired.
tired. Yes.
I think that I love the way you say that. And I think, you know, I think the other thing is, um, you can't understand, they cannot understand what it's like to be in this body and what it's like to see the world through our lenses. It's not one lens, but it's many, many lenses that get built and cultivated and altered over time with every experience that we go through. And you're fighting these hormonal tidal waves of change. Like the hits just keep coming. And so I think not only can many of our partners not understand that, it also requires a shift in perspective that it's not a flaw in us, it's not a flaw in them. So that like you have to release the need to kind of point a finger and put something to blame, which is what we want, right? We want to see these things and go, I can blame this one thing and then I can fix it. Because then that's the third thing. I know this about a lot of the men in my world, and I even watch it in my boys. They're so quickly tuned to fix, right? Like, this is a thing, it's a problem. Let me go come in and fix it. Or sometimes worse, what you need to do is,
Yeah.
do I?
No. No,
Do I?
thank you.
What you need to do it. Do I? I didn't, like, I must have been asleep for the last 55 years. I'm so God, that was such a like so I think for a lot of men, they have to fight this innate need to find a blame, find a reason, and make it make sense. And half the fucking time, the reasons do not make sense. Because if we can't make sense of them, I'm sorry, but you can't either. So they want that. then they wanna come in and, like, start fixing shit, or they wanna tell you how to solve it on your own. And it's like, it requires a very different way to show up. And on us, like, let's take responsibility too, because I have to also ask for what I need. And sometimes I have to be real explicit, like, "Hey, what I need from you right now is I need you to not say anything. I'm gonna pour some shit out, and I just want you to sit there. I don't want you to do anything. I don't want you to say anything." Or, like, there's something else that was contemplating, and I was trying to explain, when it comes, because I've been fortunate, I have my 3 boys, and, I was trying to explain something, and it's like, and I couldn't get what I was feeling across, this, like, innate feeling in my soul and my body, right? And he's like, "Yeah, I don't get it. I don't get it." And I'm like, "Well, maybe it's because you didn't, like, house them and you didn't birth them, and, like, I can't make it make sense to you. And I don't even need you to understand why it makes sense to me, but I need you to acknowledge that this is how I feel."
Yes, and I think this is really important, and I see it in so many places. Like, you don't actually have to understand. You just need to listen,
Yeah.
right? And make space for that. And I don't know if you're referring to like the way relationships change with parents and children as they become adults is really interesting to me. And it's something okay.
Okay,
Yes.
where's the book on that?
Yeah, because and we're just beginning to navigate it, right? So
Yes.
my kiddos are both away at university, but when they come home, the dynamic changes so significantly. And I also have 2 boys.
Yeah.
But there is this real shift.
Yes.
And I haven't been able to put a finger on it yet as to exactly what it is, but there is such a different way in the way that Ken relates to my boys and the way
Yeah.
that I do.
Yeah.
Like, I think he feels less of a parenting role at
Yeah.
this point,
Yeah.
and I think it is, and he and I have talked about this a little bit where I was like, they were part of me.
Like, physically,
They lived in my body.
yeah, they lived in
Yeah,
my body.
they lived in my
I
body.
nursed them, like, I fed them for 2 years.
Yeah. And I think there's a bit of a tension
Mm.
that forms when you kind of have gone back to a one-on-one with your partner,
Mhm.
right? Like he
Mhm.
gets me and my attention all the time. But when they come home, there is this sense of like, oh, he doesn't get me to himself anymore.
Mhm.
And I think it's a little hard for him.
Mhm. The dynamic is super weird, and I think there's a couple things in that. Number 1, I don't know about you, but I read all the books, right? Like, What to Expect When You're Expecting and blah, blah, blah. Where's the fucking book for parenting adults, first of all, because
Yes.
that doesn't exist. Number 2, I think that the other changes, and I am really trying to navigate this, and I write about this in my book because I have not mastered this. And each of my dudes are 3 different dudes. So, first of all, you have
Yeah.
to cater to 3 different humans, right? And I'm one person, so I'm trying to do that. They need different things. And, I think the other reality is our existence, right, was meant to keep them alive. We sustain their life for so long. And then, and everything about my being, every fiber of my being was about, like surrounding my kids in some way. Was it hovering? Sure. Am I overbearing? Yeah. But it's just how I rolled, right? And now I'm having to unlearn, we talked about unlearning, I'm having to unwind and unlearn some of that, and I don't have a playbook. And so I'm trying to navigate this in a new way, and I see that it can bring confusion to those around me because I do, like, sometimes I feel like, if the boys don't call me, like, I tell them all the time, I need a text or a call every day. But do you know how weird it is to go days without hearing your kid's voice? I was trying to explain
Yeah.
this to my man. In my life, these are the voices, right? And my mom's voice, I'm still fortunate to have that. My grandma's voice was so pivotal. I can't remember what her voice sounded like. But these voices for these boys, I heard them every day of their entire life. And then they move away and they think, oh, yeah, it's cute. I just won't call her for a week. What the fuck is that about? It like breaks me. And
I
I'm like
know.
devastated. But it's like that alone, that the fact that I am trying to grapple with not hearing my kid's voice every single fucking day.
Yeah.
It is gut-wrenching to me.
It is really hard,
Mhm.
and it's like that's one really concrete example of how for so long you're woven into
Mm.
the fabric of your young human's life.
Yes.
Right. So, and they in yours. So you know their friends and you know what they're doing and you know what their school life is about and you know their if
You
they
know
have a
everything.
partner of some description, right? Like you are a part of all of those things. And then suddenly it's like the fabric just gets ripped apart.
Yes.
And there's so much to grieve in that.
Yes.
Yes. And
It's like
people
the
always
worst breakup. It's like the worst kind of breakup. It's like, but I write about this in the book, and I also write a blog, so I write about parenting a lot in the blog. But there was a situation last year where, um, because I'm still learning how to navigate these adult humans, right, and what they need from me, and who they are as people, and what their triggers are. They each have three very different love languages, but I know for me they need different things. So if I come at my older son with like lists, and did you do this? He's like, bring it on. I love it.
yeah.
Ask me all the questions. Give me all the
Oldest
things.
son
Yep.
energy, yes.
My middle son, though, if I come at him like that, and I only learned this after an incident last year where we were on a phone call, I had asked him two things, but somehow in his mind, he took those questions. And I didn't find out about this until like 3 months later when he and I actually talked about it. But what he did was he absorbed that conversation as somehow I didn't trust him and that I didn't have I didn't have confidence in him and I was disappointed in him. Nothing in my words ever conveyed that. And so we had this conversation and then he wasn't able to come on a family ski trip, but my oldest son went and my youngest son went and I was with my man from Australia. So we go on the ski trip, we're gone for 5 days. I didn't hear from my kid once. I cried the entire time. I was constantly looking at my phone, waiting for a text, waiting for a call. These three boys around me are trying to console me. And I'm like, you don't understand. You don't understand how I'm feeling. They're like wanting to call my middle son. And I'm like, you cannot please don't. But I was really suffering. And my oldest son says, hey, let's go out for a drink, just you and me. So we did. We went out for a drink. And he said, look, this isn't about you. Okay. This is about him feeling overwhelmed and, kind of scared about, the next phases of life and not sure what to do. And you have to remember, you're our safe space. I said, what does that mean? He said, you're the thing that when our world gets overwhelming, we know that you don't leave. So you get our frustration and our anger because we know you don't leave. And I was like, well, holy shit. Okay,
Yeah.
cool. Then the kid calls like 2 days later, but it was 5 days. I didn't hear from him. It was devastating. So then he and I go on a trip, just the two of us together, March, April, May, 3 months later. And I had not talked to him about that whole thing, but we get on this trip and it's just him and me. And I was like, hey, I kind of want to talk about that week. And rather than me going, what were you thinking? That was so rude. Do you know how terrible that was? Do you know how I felt? I said, what was going on for you that week? And that's when he told me. He's like, look, that conversation, it was over something like 2 or 3 things that were so trivial, like car tires and maybe school registration fees and like something so dumb. But that's when he told me,
Yeah.
this is how I felt. And I'm like, fuck. Okay.
Uh-huh.
And I wasn't going to say how I felt during that week because I thought, you know what? I need this to be about him. But then I realized we're 2 adults now, right? I have to be able to say how I feel and what I need. So then just as I was going to say, well, here's how that week was for me, he asked me, how was that week for you? And I was like, damn, it was fucking hard, you know?
Yeah. When we talk about not having a playbook, that is true. And one of the things that I want for parents to know with younger humans is what you were saying about safe space. And I have heard Gabor Mate say it also, that a parent's job is not to protect our children from every hard thing in the world. Our job is to be the safe space for them to come to heal
Yeah.
from the hard things they experience in the
Yep.
world. And I think there's a key part of that in how your relationship will evolve with
Yep.
adult children.
Yeah.
If you're able to look through that lens and know, I'm facilitating space for an adult to come forward.
Yeah.
I saw this video recently about parenting is kind of this like nonstop grieving because this little person is constantly going and changing and you don't get to keep any part of
No,
that
you don't.
evolution. And I was like sobbing by the end of that video and I was like, yes, that's
Right.
it. This is the issue.
It is.
But yeah, we are working to create humans that function and can handle all the
Yeah.
hard shit that happens in the world.
Yeah.
And our job is to hold them and give them all the love that they need to let all of that, to process all of that, let it go, and then go back out again because
Yeah.
the world is never going to stop being hard.
No,
And
it
I'm,
isn't.
yeah,
No, I love that, and it's such a good reminder, and I was reading like, I saw something on Instagram. It's that whole dichotomy of, like, where you send your kids out in the world and you get feedback like, "Oh my god, your kids are, like, the most well-behaved boys," and they come home and then they like,
yeah,
"Who are you?" But I do think that there's also something about, that is part of what we take on as being a parent, right? It's not always gonna be roses and sunshine. It's sometimes you're gonna get the worst. You're gonna get the best out of your kids, and sometimes you're gonna get the worst out of your kids because they have to have a place to release a lot of that. And look, not that I want to be a doormat and not that I'm going to allow my kids to treat me like shit. And in addition to all the things you said, I do want to be that place where when the world gets too hard and maybe their healing is they got to come home and just vent. Yeah, I want to be that place for them. And I want to do it in a way that I can still maintain my boundaries and I can still communicate with them as adults. Like, hey, when you came at me with this thing, I do a lot of working on that with the kids, right? Especially because they're boys. My oldest son is really good about telling me how he feels. So that same kind of conversation that I had with my middle son, had I had it with my older son, he would have in the moment stopped and went, hey, the way you're coming at me right now, you're making me feel like this. Okay, but he's like higher emotional intelligence. He's very feeling, and he and I have a different bond where he can intercept it in because he's done that to me before. Hey,
yeah,
I get you're frustrated, but you're making me feel over responsible for this thing, and it's not my responsibility. And it's like, oh, fuck, yeah, you're right. So you
yeah,
want a little bit of that too, but it is. I think that parenting adults, man, it is.
yeah. It's a whole other being. And so I want to wrap up with your book. So
Yes.
tell me about the intention for the book and the thing that
Yeah.
you hope people take away
Yeah.
from it.
Well, so first of all, I mean, the book actually was something that I conceived 20 years ago. I had an outline, I had chapters because I was struggling with all these questions and I was looking around and everybody was like, oh my God, their lives all look put together. So I thought, I must be the crazy one. I must be the only one suffering through this. And I literally housed it all in a red folder. The red folder sat on my desk for 20 years. I found it at December of 24. And I opened it and I was like, well, look at that. And I'm still as confused. I have a whole new set of things that I didn't even contemplate 20 years ago. And I'm still looking around and everybody looks so shiny and like perfect. So, the intention behind the book is recognizing not just for women of our age, but also for women in their 30s and 40s, when life starts to feel a little topsy turvy, you're not falling apart. You never were. You're not alone. Things are going to change at a very rapid pace, but there are ways to navigate it and we can take the power back. And I think one of the most inspirational stories in the book, I talk about this woman all the time. My oldest real girl in the book is a woman. Her name is Diane Heiler. She's 82. She herself is an author. She wrote her first book in her late 70s after the death of her second husband. And it's a book on grieving. So if you haven't checked it out, I highly recommend it. But she wrote it in her late 70s, early 80s. She was never an author. So she did the thing, and then she went on to find love again. So I interviewed her for the book, and we talked about a lot of things. And the last question I asked her was, what's been the most surprising thing about finding love at 82? She said that the parts still work and I like it. And I'm like, well, holy shit. That's who I want to live like Diane. So not only is it good for, kind of rear view mirror, but it's really good for remembering we're not done. It might feel like we've conquered some really big hills now, but guess what? Our 60s are going to look different than our 70s and our 80s. And imagine all the work that we're doing now to embrace and accept and fight through and relearn and unlearn and rewind and really kind of live for ourselves in this spacious new life that we're creating. Imagine what our next decades are going to look like. So that's like, be excited, be grateful, be thankful, and know that you're not alone. All the wild, unhinged things that you're experiencing, chances are there's about 1,000 other women who are going through the same thing that you are, and you're not alone, and you were never crazy.
Yes, yes, love it. All right. Thank you so much for sharing all of this goodness with us today. You can find how to purchase Angela's book in the show notes. Make sure you check that out. It's a fantastic read. Angela, loved every moment of this conversation.
Honestly, this has been so amazing. Thank you for having me on, Lisa.
Thank you for hanging out with me on Transforming 45. If you laughed, nodded, or had an oh wow moment, hit follow and share it with your favorite midlife human. Find me on Instagram at lboat and keep those transformations coming.
Electricast.